On a Monday, this here is the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hope everybody had a great weekend. You'll hear more about mine in my sprint triathlon recap coming up at 4:30. Yes, that is the thing you have all been waiting for. I survived. That much is clear. How bad did it hurt and how did I do? You'll find out coming up at 4:30. However, we start with the NBA Finals, which are now, as very few people predicted, tied at 1. I did not think this would be a sweep. I did think this would be a 5-game series. This is certainly not the game I thought Miami would win. We will get to in about 10 minutes whether or not our thoughts have changed overall on this series. But let's focus on last night first. Miami starts hot, and they start hot thanks in part to the fact that Max Strus had a law of averages moment. Max Strus is a really good shooter. He went 0 for 9 from 3 in Game 1. He missed a lot of open looks. He got many of those same looks in Game 2, and he hit not all of them, but damn near. In that first quarter, he was awesome. He kept getting open. He kept finding himself open. And that's also in part thanks to the Miami defense being significantly better, and which is something we'll talk about, how the cyclical nature of basketball, runs feed themselves in the second quarter with the Nuggets. But Miami was in a much better place thanks to starting Kevin Love, something that I think a lot of people, ourselves, Anthony and I included, thought would happen because it just made a lot of sense. In Game 1, Aaron Gordon went bananas because he was way bigger than everyone guarding him. This was a very easy decision for Eric Spoelstra, also because Caleb Martin was sick and has not been feeling well. But the size discrepancy and what Kevin Love is and isn't defensively is, I think, overstated. Like, he's not a good defender, but he's not unplayably bad. Like, this dude's played in championship, games or championship series multiple times in his career. He's been on winning teams for a lot of his career. He knows how to play within a scheme very well. He's a very smart basketball player. And also, he's a tremendous rebounder, not quite as good as he was earlier in his career. He was one of the best in the league. But also his ability to start the break, his intelligence offensively, the way he keeps the ball moving. He's a good shooter. It's a pretty easy decision. And also when it comes to his defensive liabilities, a guy like Aaron Gordon isn't going to take advantage of them. He's not going to beat you off the dribble with consistency. If Aaron Gordon's beating you off the dribble, okay, you live with that. The Nuggets are out of what they want to be. And so it just takes away the easy bully ball size mismatch, and you saw the impact of that in the first quarter. That said, Nikola Jokic, I've been saying his name wrong the whole time, and I apologize, especially to the Jokic family, because his brothers are very large and they could beat me up. Nikola Jokic, since the game was getting away early, and said, enough of that, we're done here. And he took 9 shots in the first quarter when he took 6 in the first 3 quarters of Game 1. Miami played things completely differently, but also Jokic was aggressive and smart and sensed the game and was able to pull them close. And then Denver goes on this massive run late first into the second. Overall, it was a 40-14 run. Teams don't win games in which they are on the wrong end, on the 14 end of a 40-14 run. And there's kind of a moment, it's about a 15-point game, it's 50-35. It looks like, okay, that was cute, Miami, the first quarter, but Denver woke up now. And it happened, by the way, when Jokic was on the bench. And then somehow, some way, Miami claws back into it by halftime. And they're within striking distance. And then, obviously, early fourth quarter, they have the Duncan Robinson 10-0 run, but we'll get there. The thing about the second quarter run for Miami, which I think is informational for them and informative for them moving forward, things they have to avoid at all costs, is it was cyclical. Miami missed a shot, which led to them not being able to set their defense, which led to Denver having better offensive results. And I think that piece of data also reflects why Denver didn't call timeout at the end of the game. Michael Malone all but said it out loud. he's like, we didn't want Miami to set their defense because when Miami calls time or when there's a timeout, Miami comes out in something different. Michael Malone, they call timeout. He draws up a play for man-to-man. Miami comes out in zone. Well, there goes your play. You draw up a play thinking they might go zone, and they play man-to-man. Well, there goes your play. Now you got to draw up 2 plays. Now you're trying to rush things. Like, Miami's too unpredictable. Just play. Oftentimes, the best thing you can do to them is get them in unorganized mode because when they're organized, they're great, and they're so good at getting organized. But you can't get organized off of long misses where the other team's getting out in transition. You just have to match up with who you're by and hope that you live with that. And it got Miami in some bad spots. They had some live ball turnovers, including the big Murray dunk where he kind of powers through a Strus block attempt, flexes on him, the whole deal. Like, those live ball turnovers, like even if Miami turns the ball over but they throw it out of bounds and it's a dead ball situation, that's so much better for them than a live ball turnover or a long rebound. Or even, the thing is with Denver, you just miss a shot. Jokic gets a regular old rebound that falls off the rim. He's out on the break, and you're playing catch-up transition defense. Miami has to continue to find ways, and whether it's with great transition defense to slow things down at the point of attack. Like, I would almost tell my guards, instead of sprinting back, like, pick up Jokic full court. Just slow the ball. Like, you obviously have to have somebody sprint back because otherwise he just throws the ball over the top to whoever the free runner is. But you have to find a way to slow him down and not let him get a 75-foot full head of steam and have the offense start in motion. You've got to slow things down if you're Miami, and they kind of did that in the second half, which was why, obviously, the outcome was very, very different. The other thing about Miami defensively, and I don't know why I've never had this thought before until the end of game 1, and I didn't think I thought about this after the show on Friday, so I didn't have a chance to say it, and then I was curious if it would hold true in game 2. I kind of tested my theory watching, and 100% it works. There's 2 reasons why the zone works for Miami, specifically against Denver, but the first one is the reason zones work in general, which is it lets little guys do little guy stuff and big guys do big guy stuff. And that's especially true against Denver, where Denver is a mismatch hunting team, and they have so many guys that can create mismatches, and even like a mismatch against their own position, right? Jamal Murray's a great post-up guy, and Jokic is a great perimeter guy. But it's not that, like, Gabe Vincent guarding Nikola Jokic is a problem if Jokic can post him up. Gabe Vincent getting all up in Jokic's grill 28 feet from the basket and defending him if he's trying to take him off the dribble is not nearly as problematic. He can just get in the way. He's quick enough to stay in front of him. And if Jokic ultimately winds up shooting over the top, fine, as long as that is a tough 2 or even 3. Like, make that a contested off the dribble something with a 6'1" guy doing the hand in the face business. Like, that's fine. Because if he drives and backs him down all the way into the lane, well, now Adebayo's waiting there and can do big guy stuff, right? By the same token, Jamal Murray posting up Gabe Vincent, posting up Kyle Lowry, although good luck posting up Kyle Lowry because he's a human brick. Posting up some of these smaller guys, you can't do that against a zone. So for a team that likes to hunt mismatches and put guys in positions defensively that they're not used to being in, that's what a zone eliminates. It also eliminates pick and roll basketball, which is where where Denver's at its best. So I do think that Denver can make some adjustments. We'll talk about those in the next segment because they have the skill to beat Miami. The idea that the Miami zone can't work against Denver or that it's a bad idea, I think was a little overstated based off data, based off the fact that Denver murdered zones in the regular season, based off the fact that they do have the talent that we'll talk about in 5 minutes and what you need to do to beat a zone. But they have done a bad job adjusting to it so far. And I think the reason why is the underlying principle that you let guards do guard stuff. You let big guys do big guy stuff. And that eliminates mismatches for a team in Denver that is a team full of walking mismatches because of their versatile skill sets. Last thing I'll say real quick about Game 2 is Bam Adebayo's decisiveness right now and the amount of offense they're running through him is really remarkable for a center. They made him the point guard last night. The concerted effort to get Bam the ball as if it was Chris Paul with the Clippers, where it's like, no, every possession starts with Chris Paul because he's the best point guard in the league. And why would you have anyone else dribble the ball across half court and initiate your offense? That's how the Heat were treating Bam last night, just because they wanted to get Jokic in a bunch of pick and rolls. They wanted to make Jokic defend, and it worked. And as Miami made that run to start the fourth quarter, it showed kind of the inverse truth of the zone theory. Like, Jokic is kind of hanging out at the free throw line in no man's land, like slightly above it, when Bam is dishing. And he only had, I think, 4 assists in the game, but it felt like they all came at the start of the fourth quarter and led to some of those Duncan Robinson and Game Vincent buckets where they're all mean-mugging and side-eyeing Denver as they take the lead there at the start of the fourth. And what you can do as a guard in that situation, if your guy is just dishing all over the place, is you put more pressure on the ball. And Jokic wasn't comfortable doing it or didn't know to do it, or just like it wasn't his instinct to be like, oh, I can make this pass more difficult by jamming up the ball handler or making Bam turn his back to protect the ball. And instead, he's just kind of floating there in this drop coverage, kind of clog up the lane, but I'm not actually in the lane, no man's land. And as a result, Miami's cutters were able to get open. And when, they cut off the cutters, there's shooters open. And it just was easy for Miami. And that lack of attention to detail, I hate to say it, and I'm not saying Denver's not going to win, because I still think they are, but you see in that moment why a defense the caliber of the Denver Nuggets doesn't typically win championships. So, how do they adjust? And can they do the things they need to offensively? And do they even need to adjust offensively in order to win? We'll dive into that next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are, of course, your home for Washington Wizards basketball, which I mention because we have breaking news on that front.
Breaking news. Oh, snap, news is broken. Breaking news.
The Washington Wizards have announced that they are hiring Will Dawkins, the former assistant GM and number 2 to Sam Presti in Oklahoma City, to be their new general manager. He will report to Michael Winger, obviously work with Travis Schlenk, but Will Dawkins is the hire for the general manager spot of the Washington Wizards. We will cover this story more throughout the show. We let the music play quite a bit there, in part just because we were sending a couple of emails real quick to see if we can get someone from Oklahoma City on. We'll check in with some of our Wizards folks as well. But the breaking news just moments ago, the first I saw was The Athletic reporting it. I'm sure others have as well. But the Washington Wizards have hired Will Dawkins to be their new general manager, formerly the assistant GM and number 2 from Oklahoma City. So again, more on that coming in just a little bit, and more coverage throughout the show. We continue though talking NBA Finals for right now as we look to get you more info on Will Dawkins, and whether or not anything that we saw last night changes our opinion on the series. Now, I would say no, other than I think this is probably going to go 6 or 7 games instead of 5. 5 was in part a number because I kind of figured Denver would win 2 games at home and then ultimately split in Miami and then win game 5 at home. Well, now if they split in Miami, this thing goes back to Denver 2-2. They win game 5. Let's see if they can win game 6 in Miami, or it takes a game 7 in Denver. I also thought this would be, and I guess I should clarify, like when I said I thought it would be a 5-game series, it's not because I didn't think that it would be non-competitive. Just the way the games fall with the schedule and everything like that, I thought Denver had a really great chance to win 4 competitive games in 5 tries. But this was always going to be a competitive series because Miami makes things extremely difficult. They are so game plan disciplined, and they're willing to try stuff. Like Spoelstra's a genius. And I think Spo fully embraced last night a tactic that I certainly was in favor of, which is let Jokic get his. Make it difficult, but know Jokic is going to get his, and do not allow other people to beat you. And it's pretty well reflected in the box score that was exactly what they did. Obviously, Jokic doesn't have a lot of assists last night. I think he only winds up with 4, but it's not just that. It's not like that can happen if guys miss shots. But that's not what happened last night. They didn't get to take shots last night. Jamal Murray doesn't have his usual output. Now he has a couple big shots, obviously, in the fourth quarter. He gets a shot off to tie the game. And let's not pretend like this game wasn't close last night. And let's also not pretend that it didn't take one of the single best quarters you will ever see offensively from a team. Miami last night had like an offensive rating of 186, I think, in the fourth quarter. AKA, if they did that over the course of 100 possessions, they would score 186 points. That's insane. The best offenses in the league are like 120. They were at 186. But last night, 3-point attempts, Denver, a team that is super 3-point happy, only takes 28. Only takes 28. Miami took 35 last night. And, I would say about 4 of those of the Denver 28 are because Michael Porter Jr. lost his mind and became young Michael Porter Jr. again, who doesn't play smart NBA basketball. Murray had 8 attempts. He had the in-rhythm types that he tends to knock down at a much, much higher clip. Jeff Green only has 1. Bruce Brown has 3. Christian Brown has no 3-point attempts. He did have that nice run in the second quarter, but no 3-point attempts. They just did a really good job of limiting the attempts of everyone. No one had double-digit shots outside of Murray and Jokic. They embraced that. So the question becomes, what can Denver do, and why do I think Denver will still win the series? I think it's as simple as they have the talent to overcome the things that the Heat are doing. They've got to start using some of their slashing and cutting more. I think someone like Bruce Brown is really important. Obviously, Aaron Gordon's really important. But I think what tends to happen against zone is teams get incredibly stagnant, and I think that's the worst thing that Denver can do. I think they need to actually up the motion. They have great cutters and great shooters and a lot of pieces that are interchangeable and are good at both of those things. So can you get Jokic to the free throw line and essentially have him post up from there, knowing that at 7 feet tall, he's got the floor vision to see everything, and you send a cutter through and then fill the spot that he came from with the shooter. If you cover the cutter, now the shooter's open. If you cover the shooter, well, now you're giving up a wide open dunk. And if you're scrambling everybody out to the shooters, now you got more space for Jokic inside. I'll leave you with one more stat that I think is something to watch for in Game 3 that I would bet would change. Jokic only had 9 post-ups last night. 9. Lowest of the playoffs. They averaged, I think, I was listening to Zach Lowe's pod with Brian Windhurst, their post-game pod. I think Zach said, the reason I say I think is because it sounds so preposterous to say this out loud. I'm fairly sure that in this game, they averaged over 2 points per possession per post-up. So that means every time Jokic touched the ball in the post, they got better than a 2-pointer out of it. They either got a foul and one, they got a 3-pointer. Like on average, that was the result. 2 points. It might have just been the post touches that he passed out of because open threes. And with 9, you're talking about a small sample size. But needless to say, it was really effective. And so what the zone does is it limits the amount of post-ups. But I think Denver has to find a way to get Jokic on the post more, let him isolate, and either throw in these little hook shots or find the shooters around when the defense collapse. And I think that's a formula for success. That said, it's really about the defense, because I know the Nuggets scoring 108 doesn't feel like a good output for them, but it's because the game was slow. Miami's playing this at closer to their pace. They're not playing 120 possessions, 115 possessions. These, in fact, they're not even cracking 100, because the Nuggets' offensive rating in this game was 126. The problem was Miami's was 129. That is a pace that's the best offense in the league if you were to hold that for the entire year. Both of those numbers. So what it tells you is the Nuggets actually offensively last night were pretty good. They've got to get the pace a little bit faster and play and tighten the screws on defense so that Miami is forced to execute at that level more often, which I don't think they're quite capable of. And obviously, if they tighten the screws on defense, it becomes harder to do so. So, series tied at 1. We'll continue to talk about it. Mark Kestisher is going to join us coming up at the top of the hour. He's on the call for ESPN Radio for these games. Coming up next, we will either have some more insight on Will Dawkins, the new Wizards hire, if someone is available to call us right now. If not, we will have that by the end of the show for sure, so make sure you stay tuned. But in lieu of that, we will go ahead and knock out my triathlon recap next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. I ran a triathlon. How'd it go? I'll tell you next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Again, breaking news if you are just joining us. Will Dawkins is the new general manager for the Washington Wizards, previously in Oklahoma City. We'll have more insight on that as the show goes on. But, Anthony, let's stick to the rundown for now as we hunt down some insight on Will Dawkins. But your boy did it. He, who sits here with tired, hurting legs, did a sprint triathlon yesterday.
My mic was down. Yeah, you did. I actually texted you.
You did?
When I woke up. You were concluding.
That was when you woke up?
Yeah, I had a late night Saturday, so I slept until 10.
Yeah, I did see some Instagram stories. You were out celebrating someone's birthday.
I was at a Rose Bar, where John Wall used to.
Yeah, John Wall's
always
famous last
party.
stand.
Yeah.
And many other stands.
His jersey is in the rafters there.
As it should be. As it should be. Anthony, so I had been up a while. So apparently when you do a sprint triathlon, they start early. You
Really
have to be there. You have to be there early. At least this one, the Reston Sprint Triathlon. Shout out to the Core Foundation and everyone who puts that on. But I had to be up before 5 a.m.
5 a.m. Good Lord.
Yeah, that was not favorite. And my poor wife, best teammate I could ever ask for, best cheerleader, best encourager, best everything. She was right there with me.
I was trying to figure out how Rachel was she was at so many different checkpoints.
She was incredible.
Yeah, she was.
In capturing, one, she captured content and that was cool that afterwards she had a bunch of videos and photos and all this kind of stuff. But also just to, as someone going through the thing, to see her and get the encouragement at all times, in honesty, man, it was incredible and it meant a lot. And she was so good and so smart and so tactful, and that's who she is, which is why I'm lucky to have married her. But she didn't, at least for 3 seconds at 4:55 a.m. when that alarm went off. I'm not sure if she felt quite as lucky to have married me because, God, that was early. So we get there, we drive out, get there about 5:45. I did feel like a genius because I had been when I went out earlier in the week to kind of test the course, and I also went out on Saturday to pick up my race bib and all my gear and all that kind of stuff. And I had found a spot that I was like, oh God, if we can park here, that's going to make our life so much easier. And sure enough, we went to that spot and it was wide open. We were able to park exactly where we wanted to. I was like, yes, this is great. So I'd already had my coffee. I had a salt bagel because you got a carb load. You got to get the sodium in you. So I was eating that on the way out there. And so we kind of were walking around. I had put down the wrong swim time, apparently. I made a typo in my form, so I had to find a race organizer. And she got me all hooked up with the right person. We had taken care of part of that on Saturday. Had to finish that out Sunday morning, do all that stuff. And, I'm walking around in sweats and flip-flops and, all that kind of stuff. And it's 6:45 a.m. The first person's going to the pool just after 7. I wasn't going to be in until almost 8, which really kind of sucked. But I figured I'll be able to wait in the transition area, get a good warm-up in, just hang out. But at 6:45, they were going to clear all the non-athletes out. So, kiss Rachel goodbye. She goes to where she's going to be watching. And they're everybody out of the transition area. So I'd popped my headphones in, was getting ready to pregame warm-up type vibes. And they're everybody out. And I'm I'm sorry, what? Everybody out? So sure enough, take all the warm clothes off, and it's 58 degrees.
Oh, so you're cold. You're shaking.
Yeah, and I'm wearing just swim trunks. They're tri swim trunks. They have the butt pad for the bike. But that was it. And I had to go, and we stand in a big crowd of people just waiting for our number to be called, and as the herd thinned out, as more people got in the pool, it got even colder. It was not a good time. And then, so I'm finally in line, and I'm chatting up some of the people that are with me in the line. Great people. Don't have anyone's name, but great people. It was a good time, good group. And it's about 7:50, which I know because the person who had gone into the pool at 7:02 was finishing. Someone did this thing in 50 minutes flat. Yeah.
Dang, that is insane.
It's
what?
Gross. He swam in like 5.5. It's a 400-meter swim. He did it in like 5.5 minutes. His bike was high 20s, I think, and then he ran after that, he ran a 15-minute 5K, 15:36, I think. His transitions were like a minute long.
Is he training for the decathlon or,
I don't know if he's training for like Olympic he's got to be competing in triathlons of like longer distances.
Definitely.
Or like be really, really good at 15-minute 5K is like, it's not like world class by any means, but that's fast.
It's good stuff.
That's like, I can't run at that pace for 800 meters.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, for 5,000. Oh. So so that happened. We're not even in the pool. There's a couple people finishing. But so I have a friend who actually is competitive in triathlons, and she had, like, we've been messaging during the week, and as I'm sitting there on the pool deck, I don't have my phone on me, but I had my Apple Watch on, and I looked down and I saw that I had a message from Mary, and that got me focused. Because she gave me advice, like 3 lines of advice. It was survive the swim,
Yes, sir.
bike hard.
Mm-hmm.
The faster you run, the faster it's over.
And
I was like, okay, I got a mindset now. Just let's go. So wrap around. Finally get there. You sit on the edge of the pool. They tap you on the shoulder. They say, go. I'm in the pool. I get out, take off. I'm feeling good. And the way it works, it's like 8 to 10 seconds between people that go. And while everyone's supposed to put in their accurate swim time so there's not a bunch of log jams, things happen. And so there's people clumping up, whatever. And so pretty quick, like I feel like I'm swimming at a good relaxed pace. I didn't want to go out too hard on the swim, but I'm up on some people. So I'm like, all right, let me shift to the left and pass them. Come back down for the second 50, a couple more people. And this time I'm like, all right, I'm going to put it in sport mode a little bit. Boom, 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 pass them. And Anthony, I got about 125 meters in. So I'm on my 3rd lap. And I felt like my heart was about to come out my chest.
Dang.
I was like, oh no, we went too hard. We did too much. And so I'm starting to struggle. And I'm like, oh God, am I going to have to break? What am I going to do? And as I'm doing this, I think what happened was, because they want you to hug the right side of the lane line so that people can pass you on the left.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also what was happening was the wake of people swimming was coming and pushing me right. Because a couple times, I hit the lane line with my right hand. It's on the right of me, and I hit the plastic. And I wear my Whoop at all times, and I was really looking forward to seeing what all my data would be on the Whoop. I knocked my Whoop off.
Dang.
I felt it come loose. And as I finished the stroke, I felt it starting to come off. Luckily, I caught it. And because I was wearing the tri-shorts, there's a pocket in the tri-shorts.
Yes, sir.
So I pocket my Whoop, but now I'm like, well, damn, I'm not going to have any data on the swim. Keep going. And then I also remembered the guy, one of those guys I was talking to in line was like, I'm going to do a combination of breaststroke and freestyle so that I use the breaststroke to recover. And I had to give in. My goal, all plans I had for the swim, abandoned. I was just like, all right, let's take it easy. Sometimes I get behind someone, and instead of going for the pass, I just be like, oh, this is a chance to take a little bit of a breath.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of the pool, survive the swim. I'm only 35 seconds behind where I thought I would be. So all in all, survive, check. Run over, get towel off, get on the bike.
You cold?
Yes. My transition time was so much slower than it could have been if I had been willing to be less sweat. But I was like, I am going to freeze, put on made sure I was nice and dry, put on the cycling jersey, put on the socks, put on the shoes, get the helmet, take off. I did forget that I wish I had at that point put my Whoop back on. I forgot. It just stayed in my pocket. So then go get on the bike, start. It was a 4-mile loop that we did 3 times. And I swear to God, Anthony, there's 2 things that I had as my goal. One, I had Mary's advice in my head, bike hard. And there I was like cussing at myself. I was like, you better go, like really pushing it on some of the downhills, just surviving the uphills, all that stuff. But my goal on the bike was don't get passed by someone who's not on a nicer bike than you. Because there's some people that go flying past and I'm like, that's a $13,000 bike.
Yep, I understand.
That bike could have gotten you a car. I'm not on that I'm not on those wheels. And so if someone passed me on like a super nice bike with the carbon fiber tires and, you know, they got the little things on the front of their bike that you can like rest your arms on.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, you have a great time. I'll see. I hope you don't pass me again. But I think I succeeded. I don't think there was anybody who passed me on like a more, or that wasn't on at least an equal, if not more expensive bike. So I felt really good about that. My legs did not feel so good about it. In my heart, I felt good. My legs, I thought my hamstrings after the first lap were going to jump out of my pants.
Just one lap?
It was, yeah. So like you start kind of downhill, then it's like a little bit of an undulating hill, and that part of it was definitely longer than I remembered when I did my tests. I was like, damn, this part's going forever. And then on Barron Cameron in Reston, there's a long uphill. And that just everything, because that's the thing. There's like an adrenaline. You feel like a badass when you're flying downhill or you're pedaling hard on a nice flat. You go uphill and like there's no longer wind in your hair. Like the sound goes down. You're just like, it's
It was an uphill battle, literally.
Literally. But we did it. And then we did it. And then we did it again. I also at one point, like during the uphill, was like, all them rides you did with Kendall and Tunde on Peloton, they prepared you for this. You're just in high resistance with a 55 cadence. All those hitting hills rides. At least that's what I was trying to tell myself. And then there was the run. So finished that. I crushed my last lap on the bike. I really like found it. I felt good. Run my bike. I get off the bike. First, I'm like, whoa, almost fall over. You got baby deer legs. But eventually you're able to kind of like shake it out, run my bike back to the transition area, get my running shoes on, and then take off and, you know, take a sip of water or whatever, and then take off running. And I get to the hill. And by the way, this whole time I have been tracking on my Apple Watch, and it has an automated like triathlon setting, right? So it detects when you're in the pool based on like the accelerometer and all this kind of stuff in it, in your transition, on your bike, in your transition, and then to the run. And so I get like 2 minutes into the run. I'm starting to like waddle down a hill a little bit because I'm still kind of got baby deer legs. And I look down at my watch and it says that I'm running. And I'm like, I'm curious what my pace is. I feel like I'm slow as hell, but how slow am I? It said I was running 13:04 mile pace.
Oh my God. Craig, you're practically walking.
Right. And I'm like, I didn't think I was that slow, but I literally, Anthony, laughed out loud at myself. I was like, whatever, I don't care. I'm just here. I'm just gonna have fun with it.
You're gonna get through it.
I'm gonna get through it. My legs will loosen up. It'll get better. It'll be fine. But a couple minutes later, I look down again, and I realized that, like, again, at this point, I've been running for like no more than 4 minutes, and it says I've been running for like 8, and I'm like, it messed up the transition. It thought when I was running with my bike back to the transition area that I had started my run, meaning that I've actually gone a lot faster pace than that 13, and it was already down to like 12 something at that point.
Yeah.
Turns out I was running about 9:40 pace.
Okay.
Which, considering what my legs have been through, I was pretty damn happy with. Finish it up. I realized that I'm in a good place. My calves hurt like hell. And that actually is what kept me from going any faster. Like I would have done, like I had more room in like my heart rate to push and run faster. And my legs were just like, no, this is good right here. There was one point where I got passed by a guy who was a little bit older, and he's, you know, people have their different strengths. They have their some people are runners, some people are bikers, some people are swimmers. And so you pass some, you get passed by others. Thankfully, I did, I think, more passing than I did getting passed, but whatever. But I was like, this guy's not going too fast. Like, I'm going to try to keep up with him. Just watch his feed and kind of go in autopilot. And my hamstring went, no, sir. No. Dikembe Mutombo. No. Thing, it just shot up my leg. And I was like, okay, we'll just right back where we were. Sir, have a great day. I'm going to watch you run away from me.
Dang.
Yeah. There was a point where they had like a little bit of a cheer tunnel. And I saw a familiar face there, which was cool. One of my former coworkers, when I was a trainer out at One Life Fitness in Reston, was there. I was like, hey, Rhonda. And she's like, hey, Craig. And then she grabs like the megaphone from one of her coworkers and is like yelling, cheering me on down the stretch. So that was great. That was a nice boost at like the halfway point.
Need that.
And then come around, run the trail, get through the circle. And then the final stretch is like up a hill. And God bless my wife. She is waiting for me at the bottom of that hill and if people follow me on Instagram, I don't think the video is still up because it's been over 24 hours. But I'll probably post it again, like in a feed post. But she follows me up the hill. She's like, come on. She's like yelling, cheering at me, but running with me up the hill, sprint through the finish line. And I swear, as soon as I crossed that finish line, all the pain went away.
Really?
I felt so accomplished. The adrenaline was there.
So
I was like, let's go. And they handed you a medal and a water bottle. I was very happy about the water bottle. And just walked back to my bike feeling accomplished. And I did it. I did the sprint triathlon. And people asked me the last, whatever hours. It's the same thing I told you. Hey, how'd it go? It hurt like hell. But I did it. And I finished in 1:27:09. My goal was an hour 30, so I beat it by almost 3 minutes. And it felt great, man. It hurt like hell, but it felt great.
So when's the next one?
A year from now.
Oh, okay. At least you've given it thought. Some people might have been like, I haven't been giving it
During,
thought.
I was like, this is so stupid. I'm never doing this again. But with the benefit of finishing it and the hindsight and thinking about it, and like now that I know what I'm doing and like understand how it works and all the logistics, I want to do it. I don't think I want to do them regularly. I don't want to do an open water swim. I don't want to do like a longer distance. I want to do this race one more time. Because I know, obviously I couldn't do it today because my legs are gone. But like, if you gave me time to recover, but like no extra training time, I could get 126, 125 just by like know-how.
Yeah.
But I want to see like, okay, I plan on doing a lot more running this year. I know if I dedicate myself to some more swim training, that's where I really screwed up. I could cut a ton of time there. Like, I wonder if I could get down to like 120. So that's my goal for a year from now.
Is Rachel going to partake?
No, I think we decided that this is like she's hunting like a half marathon.
Okay.
So she fell in love with the running because originally we were going to do this together, and then she had a shoulder injury that our physical therapist was like, you are not swimming. Yeah. But she's also not super into biking. So I was like, you fell in love with running, just run. Yeah. And I'm mostly going to just run. I don't necessarily need to do all the other stuff, but I want to do it one more time.
That's dope, man. That's dope. I don't know if I'll ever complete one, but, if I do, I'll let you know.
What you want to do it with me next year?
No, sir.
Come on.
No, sir. I've already even thought about it.
Why don't you want to do it?
I already told you, when it comes to swimming, I'm very limited.
Okay.
I can only swim for, short periods of time.
Yeah, it's a beast. It would require training.
Yeah.
It required more training than I put in, apparently. That's what I learned. The last funny thing that I'll tell you, last little anecdote, and then we'll get to Mark Kestecher back to the NBA Finals, and hopefully we'll have someone to talk Will Dawkins in the 5 o'clock hour as well. I must have eaten the world's biggest bagels. But I swear to God, Anthony, in the car ride back, I started eating this bagel around Tyson's Corner. And when we were pulling in to D.C. on the East Street Expressway, I was still eating that bagel. And it wasn't like I was like nibbling on it. I just kept tearing off chunks and eating them, and there were just more chunks. It had to be the biggest bagel that's ever been bageled.
Was it the biggest bagel, or were there just multiple bagels that you were eating?
No, I pretty sure it was only one bagel.
Oh, okay.
It was just a giant-ass plain bagel that apparently took me 25 minutes to eat, despite continuously eating it and being ravenously hungry. It wasn't until the end. We're like on 16th Street or something. I don't know where we were in DC. And I'm just like, I think this is it, but I don't know. Lots of bagels, lots of leg pain, lots of satisfaction. That's the story of my sprint triathlon 2023. If you enjoyed the last 12 minutes or however long I've been talking, guess you look forward to doing this again next year. That's it. Anthony, what race can we get you to run?
What race? I could definitely
what would
run
you do? 5K, 10K, 10 miler, half marathon?
I think I could do a 40-yard dash.
Okay.
Or, a 100-meter dash. Or,
yeah. We have said for a long time that we want to time your 40.
I want to time in my son. I really want to know what I run right now. I'm actually running tomorrow. I'm not going to be running any dashes, though.
What are you running tomorrow?
I'm still strengthening my hamstring. I'm just doing some striders.
Oh, yeah. We got to get you back.
Yep.
If you're, I have an idea for mid-July.
All right.
I'll tell you in the break. I don't want to put anything on blast here, but I'll tell you in the break. I think we might be able to time your 40 in July.
That's a bet. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, Mark Kestisher on the NBA Finals. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. More insight on Will Dawkins later on in the show. The breaking news, in case you haven't heard, the now former Oklahoma City Thunder assistant general manager is on his way to Washington to be the GM under Michael Winger. But we talk about today's top story, at least going into the show, now with a man who was there. Let's talk some NBA Finals with our guy Kesty. That's not the right thing. Oh, it's such a buzzkill too when you hit the wrong one and that's it. The circus music. No. We need a proper dignified introduction.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
All right, Mark Kestisher calling the NBA Finals for ESPN Radio. A man who always hits all the right buttons. Kesty, what's up?
Greg, you there?
Yeah, you got me, Mark.
I got you. I was very disappointed because I like the Price is Right. That would have been a perfect introduction for me.
So we do a segment at the end of our show. We do have the actual Price is Right theme on the board, by the way.
Oh.
So, I mean, if this is what you want as your intro music,
well,
sadly I
I have
can.
a chance to win something. If I hear that, I still have a chance to win something. But I like the one where you've lost, man. You've thrown the wrong tag price on you've gone over the price. So, yeah, bump, but
we
we can get it.
We do need to have the fail horn. No, we do a segment.
Anytime you can get OKC executives, that's a good sign for the Wizards. Sam Presti's run a good shop out there in OKC. I'm not as familiar with Will, but that's a good start for the Wizards, just by first blush.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that. You know, when we started this process after the surprise firing of Tommy Shepard, I was like, just go to the places that are good and steal their second guy. And Oklahoma City is the first name that I mentioned. So that's exactly what they did. I didn't even realize that Will Dawkins was, a highly sought after guy and someone who Michael Winger has known for a long time. I was just hypothetically putting out people I didn't know or I wasn't 100% confident existed, and turns out that's the guy.
Get their guys in like 10 of their 75 first-round picks, and that wouldn't be so bad.
That would be nice. All right. You, sir, though, were in Denver last night. You touched down now in Miami. Game 3 coming up here in just a few days. But, after Game 1, what would you put the percentage on that when you got to Miami, the series would be tied at 1?
I have underestimated and undervalued their abilities all season to my own detriment. I still, did I give them a 20% chance to get a Game 2 win? It was hard to see. It wasn't more about them than it was Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray in addition to Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter and Bruce Brown off the bench and all those guys. I mean, those guys hadn't lost in weeks, and they hadn't lost at home in months, and they're really on a roll. And you knew Miami was going to come with some force, as they like to say, and they would make a tactical adjustment. You just didn't know if it would be successful. And as well as they played, in the first quarter, before you blink in the second, they're down 15. So you anticipate that all these things can happen. And so, but in the end, I shouldn't be surprised, but I was surprised that, we're here in South Florida now, and we got 1-1 going to Game 3.
Yeah, I mean, the way they closed Game 4, or the fourth quarter of Game 1, I should say, I feel like it had to give you a little bit of hope. But how surprised have you been at the efficacy of Miami's zone in this series, considering what Denver was against zone and kind of their talent that lines up well to defeat it going into this?
I think it's a testament to, as much as you're built to beat the zone like Denver is, and specifically like Jokic is, to get him at the free throw line to operate from there and work from the inside out. The amazing thing about Miami zone, and that's, us, I'm still learning even at 55 from PJ Carlissimo and Doris Burke, to see this, what's really an amoeba.
Pretty good ones to learn from. Humble brag, Kesty, humble brag.
Not too bad, right? Hanging out with good company. It's an amoeba. It's like you can't define it. They're even having trouble defining it as they watch it. And then when we have different players, we had Bam before Game 1, we had Jimmy Butler before Game 2, to try to describe the concentration that it takes, whether it's man defense or whether it's this shifting zone. They knew what they were up against, that you can't make mistakes, and that's what they did in the first half or three quarters of Game 1. You make mistakes, you don't concentrate enough, you're going to get crushed by Denver. And in the second half, and specifically in the fourth quarter, I mean, that was peak Miami. Can they do that for 4 wins? I don't know, but that was impressive. And I guess to answer your question, it's, even if you're built to beat the zone, you still have to have enough time on a short shot clock and have the wherewithal to make the right pass, which they usually do. But last night, more often than not, they were put in tough positions.
Mark Kestecher, play-by-play ESPN Radio, calling the NBA Finals with us here on the Hoffman Show. So the funky thing that I honestly didn't even realize, Mark, till I was listening to Zach Lowe and Brian Windhorst talk about it on their post-game podcast, is that it really came down to Denver's defense and their inability to stop Miami. I think the offensive ratings for both teams were like 129 for Miami and 126 for Denver, which are insanely high numbers. So Denver, even though they score only 108, was producing at a high level. But at what point last night, especially in that fourth quarter, did you realize just how good Miami was offensively, even if it's happening at a slower pace?
Yeah, Michael Malone took 2 quick timeouts in the fourth quarter, which gives us a chance to kind of take a breath during those timeouts and look at the efficiency of what Miami was doing. I don't get those numbers in real time, but you can just look at, 9 for 10 from the field or 13 points on 10 shots. Traditional, easy for Kesty non-math way of figuring out their unbelievable efficiency. And then as the quarter drags on, you just get the sense like Denver can't stop them. They're not getting stops. I think Michael Malone said after the game, kind of dropped the rope a little bit. And, that's what they could not do in Game 1, but showed some signs in the fourth quarter, as you pointed out, in the first game, if they could only hit some shots. And Caleb Martin, who hadn't hit a shot all night, hits a big three. Jimmy Butler, who was, as least aggressive as I've seen in a long time in Game 1, comes up with 8 big points. Duncan Robinson early in the quarter kind of set the stage. Gabe Vincent, another guy nobody talks about or knows, has been ultra consistent in the postseason and in the first 2 games. So it was really, look, when Miami gets 30 points in a quarter, and I think they had 36, correct me if I'm wrong.
That is correct.
I mean, that's a bonus. And the 2 figures, just, looking at traditional defensive numbers as in points per game, for them to hold Denver under 110 in both games, I mean, those are the numbers that Miami needs. They can't beat Denver if they score 115, 120, 125, and they haven't yet. So it's been played at Miami's pace, Denver's going to want some more possessions, maybe 10 more possessions per game. And I'm sure that's what Michael Malone's they're going to work on that in the next couple days before we reconvene on Wednesday.
No doubt about it. Mark Kessler again with us from ESPN Radio, play-by-play man. So as that fourth quarter's going and you're able to see, they're just not missing shots. And you're talking through it with Doris. You're talking through it with PJ on the broadcast and in the breaks. What do you and they ascribe that to? Is that a lack of attention to detail from Denver? Is it Miami making shots that are just, they're tough shots, but they made them? Like, how did Miami actually pull that off in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, I think it's probably truly a combination of both things, but there were missed assignments. There were over-aggressiveness from Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, closing out and, putting them at the line for three. Just mistakes that they hadn't made in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And, even though Jokic got his, and I know Eric Spoelstra shut down Ramona Shelburne on her question, which maybe was, she was close to a nerve there, knowing, all right, I don't really want to talk about, the true X's and O's of what's going on here. They did a great job with Jimmy Butler on Jamal Murray. In the end, even though Denver wasn't executing on the defensive end, I think their lack of execution on the offensive end outside of Nikola Jokic this was how they think they can win the fight. That you can't stop Jokic. You can't. But can you stop the other guys? And they stopped Jamal Murray, at least for one night. Aaron Gordon wasn't as effective. You really want him on the defensive end anyway. But Michael Porter's the guy who kind of stands out to me, where he has had such a good season this year, coming back from injury, putting himself in the right position, hitting three-pointers, lack of aggressiveness, too much settling, too much trying to create on his own. That's where they're going to need some help moving forward because, it's going to be on Denver to make this next adjustment. And I'm sure we're going to, see Kevin Love start, and they're going to hunt after Jamal Murray on on their offense, and also have Jimmy Butler hounding him throughout the game.
Yeah, definitely. So you've been doing this. We talk about every time you're on. You've been, in the chair that you're in now for almost a decade at this point. You were doing the pregame show for the decade before that. You've been around a lot of championship level basketball at this point in your career. And you typically don't see a team like Denver here. You don't see a team like Denver win with a defense at the level that they're at, the lower level of defense. Not that they're horrible, but typically you have to be a top 10 defensive team. Can this Nuggets team break the mold, or is Miami exposed that at this level you need an attention to detail and a level of execution that Denver might not have in them over the course of a 7-game series?
That's a great point. They're not awful defensively, but you're right. That's not their calling card. And, as great as Jokic is, when his career is all said and done, he's a capable defender. He's got great feet. He's got great hands, but he's not, an outstanding defender out there or a superstar defender out there. They can do it. They did it for, stretches, a long stretch of game one and for stretches in game two. I think it's unlocking, the offense. And you're right, that's not the calling card for champions usually. But if they can get the pace that they want, if they can execute on the offensive end like they did in game one, I fully expect to see a more engaged Denver team. Now they're going to have to do it on the road, which they, largely have had much success. I mean, they won 2 games in Los Angeles in the Western Conference Finals to finish that sweep. It's interesting because when it's all said and done, now that we, start to look down the road and you look at the big picture on Denver as, more of an offensive team winning a championship, or is it Miami without superstars and,
Right.
with 7 undrafted guys and, 3 minutes away from getting eliminated in the play-in game? That's what's making this final so interesting for me. I know the ratings didn't bear it out for game one, and we'll see what happens in game two. I suspect the ratings will take a little bit of a jump in game three now that we've got a really interesting series. And to me, if you don't have a dog in the fight, Miami's a really easy team to root for. I mean, it's the kind of group of guys that if you have an NBA team, that's not faring very well, that you wouldn't mind seeing them in your city.
Definitely. I think, frankly, Denver's easy to root for, too. Like, a guy like Jokic is so likable. I find Murray delightful. I think they play the right way. I think it's a really fun series. And if these two teams had different jerseys on, if this was Clippers, Celtics, or not Clippers, Lakers, I mean Clippers too, but especially if it was Lakers, Celtics with all the history there, but the same exact players, this would be like a record-breaking finals level because the basketball level is so high.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's, Denver doesn't move the needles. A lot of people don't see their games during the regular year. And outside of Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, who maybe and they didn't perform well in the regular season, so they didn't really get you a chance as someone watching on League Pass, to tune in and expect greatness. So, you're right. It's a little bit different finals in that setup. There are easy guys to root for, and really all you could ask for is if you could have a 1-1 or a 2-2. Usually those ratings will come around, by Game 5, and now the slow build begins.
Yeah, definitely. By the way, Anthony, did you hear that behind Mark there? Did you hear that in the background?
Did you catch that motorcycle revving by me?
Yeah, those are true sound. We know you're not lying to us, Mark. You are truly in South Florida.
I am on, when I was a younger man and I would come to visit my parents down here, they both live in South Florida. You drive on I-95 when it's 5 lanes, and you've got 80-year-olds who can barely see above the steering wheel, and then you've got 18-year-olds driving 200 miles an hour on a motorcycle, and I just had the 200-mile-an-hour motorcycle go by.
Yeah. Now, the thing about Miami when I've driven down there, and have you spent any time in Miami?
Of course, man.
Okay. Oh, yeah, many times.
Anthony has, Mark, obviously you have, both for work and apparently for family. I got some friends down there, and the thing about driving in Miami is everyone in Miami thinks that they are the most important person on the planet, and where they have to go is the most important place, and screw everybody else.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it, and I know my dad, who's now 81, complains about how much he pays for car insurance. And I'm like, well, of course, you've been on the roads. You've seen why. You may never get into an accident, but there's plenty of them.
Yeah. What's your zip code? Oh, I'm so sorry. You have to pay the Miami rate. Mark,
Exactly.
Appreciate your time as always. We'll know next time to greet you with The Price is Right. But, the good news is, Mark, you won this segment.
Yes. Excellent.
Yay!
Thank you, Bob Barker Hoffman. I love it.
My microphone is far too big for that, but we can. Anthony, how do you think it's in the show budget to get a mini mic?
Maybe not.
Mini thin microphone. Come on.
Actually, I better turn this music off before we get a copyright violation, and then we have even less of a show budget than we already have, which is $0.00. Mark, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
You got it, Craig. Thanks.
All right, Mark Kestisher, everybody, here with us on the Hoffman Show. I'm going to do something we don't do very often here, which is completely 1,000,000% switch gears in the absolute middle of a segment, because I want to talk about Chase Young reporting for minicamp today. Real quick, our rundown's all over the place, Anthony. We have enough content to go the rest of the show, but we've ducked, we've dipped, we've dived. And, Anthony's dancing, it's like we came out in a new segment anyway because Anthony's dancing. There's just no music to go with it. But I want to just real quick touch on this because we got time now. And the reason I'm willing to squeeze this in after talking to Mark about something completely different is I actually don't think this is much of a story. So, whoa, here's your hot take. There's not a lot to talk about here. So let's just go ahead and knock it out. Like, We've spent a lot of time talking about Chase and Montez Sweat to a lesser extent not showing up for OTAs. And I'd say we did that with good reason. We did that because I think it's important for Chase especially to show up for those things because I thought it was the best chance for him to become a better football player, which is what he needs to do this upcoming season. Him showing up for the mandatory minicamp doesn't change my opinion on that. And I think that's where things sometimes get conflated. I think sometimes when, a Chase Young shows up, it's like, what is everybody worried about? I was never worried about him not showing up for the mandatory stuff. Of course he was going to show up. I said, if he doesn't show up, well, that becomes a different problem. But I never thought that was going to happen, which is why I didn't really spend a lot of energy on it. But by the same token, him showing up for this is part of his job. Like, the other stuff was mandatory or was voluntary. This is mandatory. And so he showed up. But that doesn't change anything that anyone that reasonably criticized him for not showing up to the voluntary stuff, it doesn't change that criticism and its validity at all. He, in my opinion, made some level of mistake, not critical, not one he can't come back from, not one that is definitive even. I might be wrong on this. For all I know, he got exactly what he needed. I just happen to think, based off of my career experience and talking to people and, seeing a lot of football players pass through here in the 8 years I've been covering the NFL here and the couple that I work professionally doing radio and all this kind of stuff in Dallas and the whole deal. I tend to think for a player like Chase Young, a younger player who needs reps, that showing up to the voluntary portion of the offseason workouts is the most beneficial thing that player can do. He decided otherwise. He is entitled to do that. He's an adult, and he will deal with the consequences, good or bad. Perhaps he is set up to have an awesome season, and he will, and the consequences of his actions will be getting a fat old contract, and congratulations. I don't care if I'm right or wrong on this. I mean, I care in terms of informing my own analysis moving forward, but as in regards to Chase, I do not care. If he made the wrong move and it hurts him and he doesn't know the scheme and he's playing out of position and, winds up even getting less snaps because there's more reliable players behind him on the depth chart, then he'll suffer that consequence as well. So he was always going to show up. I don't think that was ever a thing. I'm glad that he did. I'm glad that it was on Twitter and Instagram as of like 9 a.m. this morning, so there wasn't a full day of speculation and hoopla. Smart job, Commanders and their media team. And now we get 3 days to see what he is. At this point in the spring, which will be non-determinate on his how he is in terms of his evaluation next year, other than this could be practice 7, 8, and 9 for him, and said it's 1, 2, and 3. Again, I happen to think that if this was 7, 8, and 9, that would make him better and set him up for more success. It's 1, 2, and 3. We'll find out. He's certainly talented enough to, quote unquote, overcome that. That's it. That's the Chase Young segment. Sorry it's not sexier. Sorry it's not more controversial. Sorry it's not more exciting. But we said what we had to say. Thanks again to Kesty for hopping on as well, talking NBA Finals. All that'll be up on YouTube in a little bit. Or, of course, if you missed any part of it, you can rewind right now in the free Odyssey app. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, let's take a look at what is coming up for, well, actually, we've got a couple things. One, Josh Harris has a big meeting with the NFL on Wednesday. We're going to fill you in on the details that were reported over the weekend. We also have some more thoughts from OTAs last week. Sam Howell had a bad day on Thursday, relatively speaking. How relative and how bad? You'll hear from Logan Paulson later on in the show. A little bit of a Take Command Monday for you. And we will have more on Will Dawkins, the newly hired general manager of the Washington Wizards. That's all still to come on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hope you are having a fantastic Monday. If you're just getting in your car and may have seen the news alert on your phone, the Wizards have made some news today, so let's fire it up. Let's get the old breaking news sounder back. Boom.
Breaking news. Oh, snap. News is broken. Breaking news.
They have hired Will Dawkins as their new general manager. Now, normally this would be a stop the show, like full breaking news mode type of story. But we know that Dawkins is not the most important hire. Not to push back on Will Dawkins, his importance, like the number two, the guy who's going to run the day-to-day operations of the franchise, is a really important hire. So I do want to stop down and talk a little bit more about Dawkins, what I know, what we've been able to learn over the last hour and a half or so that this news has been out. We're still working on getting someone who covers the Thunder to talk. I don't know that it's going to happen today. We might have a lot more tomorrow. I would also anticipate a press conference where Michael Winger, Dawkins, and Travis Schlenk talk, at least the top two, at least Winger and Dawkins talk later this week, and we're hoping, obviously, to sit down with them. So more on that to come. My guess is later in the week, back half of the week. But yeah, because of the hiring of Michael Winger, because we know he's the man, he's the number one guy, he's the one that's going to have the biggest say in like a Bradley Beal trade, for instance, or what happens with Porzingis. Like, this is a 7.5, 8 as opposed to a 10 in terms of the newsiness level of it. That said, it's still really important. So who is Will Dawkins? Dawkins is a guy that worked his way up in, I would argue, the best front office in the league. What Oklahoma City does is remarkable. They have no help in terms of their location. They're a small market. Oklahoma City is a, relatively speaking, small town by NBA standards. I mean, Oklahoma City is a real city. I don't know, Anthony, if you've ever been there. No time in Oklahoma City?
Not yet.
Okay. Not yet.
The World Tour still continues.
The Oklahoma City, Tourist Bureau. Did you hear that? Anthony Haney might still visit your town. But I mean, I used to actually spend a little bit of time there. I had one of my best friends from college lived there, and it's about a 3-hour drive from Dallas. So when I lived in Dallas, I would pop up every once in a while. I'd go to, when the Mavs were not in the playoffs, I would try to go get a credential and cover a Thunder playoff game. Did that once or twice in my 2.5 years in Dallas. So, like, I spent a little bit of time there. It's a real city. Like, there's suburbs, there's a downtown, there's the whole thing, but it's certainly not New York City. It's certainly not Washington, D.C. It's certainly not L.A. It's certainly not Miami. It's certainly not Milwaukee even. Like, it's pretty small by big city sports or major sports standards. And so the fact that they continuously create an organization that players have nothing but great things to say about, that, KD stayed there for a decade, Russ really didn't want to leave. It was kind of the best thing for the organization, something that, by the way, I think we should talk about, that idea of what's best for the organization, despite a player who is synonymous with said organization and has been there a long time, but isn't good enough to be the best player on a championship team. Wow, this sounds familiar. It's remarkable what Sam Presti has done. And the thing, and remember, Michael Winger also, prior to his time with the Clippers, was with the Oklahoma City Thunder organization. So these are guys that work together, know each other. Dawkins started in OKC the year that they moved from Seattle down to Oklahoma City. So he's been with the organization a long time, including Winger's years there, before Winger left for LA and then they reunite here in Washington. But the thing that you always hear about the Thunder is they are just first class in everything that they do. They are an organization that has built incredible training facilities, incredible training staff. They, have every amenity you could think of for players. They help players with their charitable work. There's just a way of doing business that endears people to that organization and has them tolerate living in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, when they're an NBA superstar. They make it the best basketball place to be that you possibly can. And as a result, they've done a lot of winning. They haven't won a title, but the fans, by the way, are also super invested because it's the only pro sports thing they have. It's that in Oklahoma, like University of Oklahoma athletics. But in terms of pro sports, it's that in AAA baseball. And so there is a passion in the fan base there that creates an incredible atmosphere. And all that, plus, the good scouting and great player development means that they win. And sure, they took a bit of a hiatus in the post-Russ era to reset things. But in that, they get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They have a bunch of young studs, the Josh Giddeys, and obviously we'll see what Chet Holmgren is, who missed all of last year after being the number 2 overall pick. They got 2 dudes named Jalen Williams, both of whom are good. Like, they just got good players, and they know how to find guys that fit what they want to do, and they know how to develop them and bring them along. And I think the biggest thing as I think about it, though, with the Oklahoma City ties here, and if I'm Ted, I don't know whether this is a conscious or a subconscious or not even on the radar, but a nice boost to have, something you didn't think about is these are the guys that, along with Sam Presti, traded Russell Westbrook. And I think it's important for people to realize, like, what Russell Westbrook meant to OKC and what OKC meant to Russ. Like, Russ was the guy who stayed. And when Kevin Durant left, the vitriol that has since worn down some, but the vitriol towards Durant, who was their beloved hero, was extreme. Like, it wasn't good. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just describing it. I'm not saying it was a good thing. It was rather inhumane. Some of it, it was childish in a lot of ways. But that's what sports fandom can be sometimes, is this intense, irrational passion that reminds you that the word fan is short for fanatic. And so Durant leaves, and the opposite side of that coin, if the hate goes towards Durant, the love was for Russ. And when Oklahoma City re-signs him and Russ signs this mass extension, this insanely, high 35% like supermax contract, basically, everyone just was like, wow, Russ is the man. Like, he's beloved. He locked in that moment with the signature on a contract that was going to pay him over $200 million. The love and adoration of the Oklahoma City Thunder fan base forever. And it was a group that included Will Dawkins that said, hey, man, like a year later, hey, man, I think it's probably time to go. And ultimately, they trade him to Houston, to Washington, to LA, and, we've seen the Russ path since then. But they had to go to him and have that conversation and say, we know you have your roots here. You've got a young family. You have all your charitable work. You have a house you love. You have all of the things. But we can't win if you're our best player. And we don't have a good way to acquire someone else. The best thing for our franchise is to trade you, reset, and hopefully it's good for you. We'll get you to a contender, which obviously they did. They got him to Houston to go play with Harden. Didn't work out, but it was a good idea. And I see why Russ, who had played with Harden in OKC in the first place, thought that would work. And they made the move. Now, Russ didn't have the no trade clause, which does complicate the situation, but that's a delicate conversation. And it's even more delicate here because of the very stupid no trade clause that Ted and the front office that was here gave him last year with Brad. But if you want to pick some guys that have had that conversation before, getting some dudes from OKC, pretty good way to do it. Obviously, Winger did something similar with Blake Griffin. Tobias Harris, not the level of star, but certainly someone who was beloved in LA and loved being there, and they ultimately had to trade him. They're used to making these tough decisions. And there was a clip from a season ticket holder event with the Clippers that we played when Winger got hired, where he talked about the humanity of all of this, that it is hard, but you ultimately have to do it because that's the job. And what the Wizards have done is get capable professionals with experience making tough decisions who have a great scouting history and are smart with the salary cap. Given their current basketball situation, I do not think they could have done any better. To the point that when we started this process, and I didn't know any of the names involved, I knew nothing about Will Dawkins. I didn't know that Will Dawkins was a human being that existed. That's actually not true. I'm a big enough NBA nerd that I'd heard the name before. But it was kind of one of those like, oh, that rings a bell. Oh, yeah, that's who that guy is. I didn't have any real file on Will Dawkins. But I said, go to the NBA front offices that have done well. Go to your Golden States. Go to your Oklahoma Cities. Go to your Milwaukees. Go to whoever. Miami. Find who the number 2 is and go hire that guy. And what the Wizards did was they took the number 2 from the Clippers, who I would put in that group, the number 2 from OKC, and the former number 2 in Golden State, who built the Hawks into a playoff contender and then got run out of town by the owner's 27-year-old son and his buddy. And they got all 3 of them. That is a good offseason. Now, they've got to do the job now, and there's still a chance it all goes horribly wrong because it's the NBA. Nothing's guaranteed. But in terms of evaluating the plan and execution of moving on from Tommy Shepard and moving on from the Shepard-Grunfeld era, getting fresh eyes from the outside who are smart, capable, and know what the hell they're doing based off of their track records, I do not think Ted Leonsis, who has gotten very little praise in the history of this show for any decisions relating to front office personnel, could have done any better. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, shift gears to the Commanders. They're going to have a new owner soon. His name is Josh Harris. As long as Josh Harris has a good meeting with the NFL Finance Committee on Wednesday. What's happening with that committee? We will tell you next here on the Team 980.
Here's what
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We'll take command for you at the top of the hour. A little bonus on a Monday. We don't do this often, but we recorded this morning for an episode that won't be out in full until tomorrow. We're going to give you a little preview of that because this is the last chance we have to talk about last week's practices before we have more practice tomorrow. And so there was some really interesting stuff from Thursday's practice. It's not fully open to the media. However, Commanders media folks, Zach Selby, their team writer, is allowed in, and he always does like a really good write-up on their website. And obviously Logan is someone who works for the team as well as working for us and being my co-host on Take Command. He also has the ability to watch. So we talked about what happened and kind of put that in context with some larger trends. And you will hear that coming up at the top of the hour. However, we go now to New York. Dateline, New York. Well, I should say it's not really Dateline, New York. It's future Dateline, New York, because this meeting is going to happen on Wednesday. Josh Harris is going to meet with the NFL's finance committee, and they are hopeful to be able to hammer out the final details of getting the NFL and he and his group on the same page, and this deal finally on the tracks heading towards approval. Again, once the NFL Finance Committee approves the deal, they could call a meeting the next day, and I guess they could do it digitally. They probably would wait like a week and get together in New York or, Dallas or Minneapolis or Kansas City, wherever. They try to do it in the middle of the country when they can, but depending on when it's happening, they could just all fly everybody to New York and vote on and get Josh Harris in and officially get Dan Snyder out. So here's the reporting from Nikki Javala and Mark Maskey in the Washington Post. Josh Harris is scheduled to meet next week. This was written over the weekend, so this week with the NFL Finance Committee. And he has given assurances that he will make the necessary adjustments to his $6.05 billion deal for the Washington Commanders to secure the approval of the league's franchise's owners, to people familiar with the NFL's inner workings and the sale process said. Those assurances by Harris have buoyed optimism that Harris's record-setting purchase of the Commanders from owner Daniel Snyder, will be recommended by the Finance Committee and ratified by the owners in the coming weeks, according to those people. It's not done yet, one of those people said Friday. It's not concluded, but it's headed in that direction. It's in that 90% plus range right now. That's great. 90 plus percent. Considering, one, it's an off-the-cuff number, so I'm not going to put last week, according to the math, where $3.75 billion was in equity and another X point whatever dollars was committed in this. And the last, I'm not going to do the math, but it seems like some of, if not almost all of the unsecured debt, which was private equity money, has been resolved, and they've figured out another financing source, or they've come to an agreement on how that money works and found out that it's actually not private equity. Whatever it is, they've gotten to a point where they feel pretty comfortable on it. They may have to secure a little bit more financing from someone, whether that is more equity or changing some money around. But it sounds like most of what they needed to do got done. And perhaps it's just clarity on some things. And as long as those questions are answered in the affirmative or the negative, depending on what the answer is needed, it's fine. Another quote from the story: there are a few questions you want to ask that will give the Finance Committee a chance to ask those questions. These things are never done until they're done, but we're all hopeful to put this behind us. That would then leave a vote of the full ownership, potentially as soon as late June or early July. The exact timetable could depend on the ability of the Finance Committee to resolve all issues with Harris and his investment group and the NFL's resolution of separate matters with Snyder and his representatives. The timing could also depend on the availability of the owners and whether the NFL would insist on an in-person meeting or allow the ratification vote to be taken remotely. The league and owners have mentioned the possibility of a special owners meeting getting scheduled for August. I would just say this real quick. They got it 24 of 32, right? If the Finance Committee wraps this thing up, and everybody on the Finance Committee feels good about it, they ain't waiting until August. There's, I want to say zero chance, because I will never underestimate the NFL's ability to do something stupid. However, I also will not underestimate the NFL's ability to do things that are in their own best interest. And I cannot stress this enough. Getting Dan Snyder officially out of the league, ending this purgatory period that we have now been in, I mean, in a way since November, but certainly since Sportico's report in April that they had come to the non-binding agreement. Nevertheless, when they came to the binding agreement about a month ago, just before the Minneapolis meetings, ending that period of purgatory, getting Harris in, letting him get to work, and getting Snyder officially out cannot happen for them fast enough. If they are good with the finance committee, they will vote ASAP. Maybe not the next day, but they will vote within 2 weeks. I would be stunned if they don't. And again, I don't think this is the kind of thing where you even call everybody. Sure, does Goodell get everybody on? I don't know how they do it. How do a bunch of 80-year-olds communicate? Is there a WhatsApp group chat? Is there a group NFL owner group text? Is Seth Wickersham in that group text under a pseudonym? They think they've been texting Ziggy Wolf the whole time, but it's actually Seth Wickersham. However they group email, whatever it is, however you schedule the billionaires meeting, they might say how many people could get to Dallas, how many people could get to Kansas City, how many people could get to Chicago, how many people get to New York on this date. And if most people can, great, they'll do it. And, if you can't send your guy, then you send the team president and he votes as proxy or whatever. Or you just say, all right, here's the Zoom. We're in it. Let's go. We're voting. It's an up or down vote. Anybody that has any questions can ask beforehand. But the finance committee says this is good. Goodell's gives it a go. Let's get this guy gone. Let's get the paperwork signed. And then it's done. So I think that will happen. Honestly, Anthony, I am out June 27th through 30th. My masochistic prediction for myself is that the team sale is going to go final and Beal's going to get traded in that week.
Dang, a week you're out.
It's possible.
Well,
it's the week leading into free agency, and there's a really good chance that that's the week it gets done.
I mean, I guess we'll have something to talk about when you get back.
Yeah. You think so?
Yep. I mean, as opposed to reacting to it as it's breaking news type of thing.
Yeah, I would prefer the breaking news. If Raj, old Goodell, never said a bad word about you. Do your boy a solid. There's some really slow times in mid-July. Give me something. Give me Major League Baseball All-Star Week. Come on.
Yes, sir.
For their own good, they shouldn't wait that long. For their own good, they should have done this 2 years ago. But what are you going to do? All right, so that's that. What about on the field? Sam Howell. Are things going the wrong direction? Well, depends on what kind of context you want to put on that assessment. Logan Paulson helps us kind of make sense of it all. Next is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. A little Take Command preview. Next. streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. Each week, Logan Paulson and I record one, two, uno, dos. I could keep going, but I'm kind of running out of languages quickly. Podcasts, but we talk obviously about everything going on with the Commanders. It's called Take Command. We play segments of it here for you on the radio show. If you want the full thing, you should subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., etc. We typically don't play it for you on a Monday because we record on Mondays, and, well, we want you to subscribe to the podcast. And, you know, why put out something on the radio show before it's available to the podcast audience? Because we love you here on the radio show. That's why. We do it, a little tease, but also it's a show of love or something. Also, it happens to be that this particular segment becomes a little less relevant by the time we're on the air for the radio show tomorrow. It is a review of the final practice from last week, something that you will only get on our podcast because not any other media is allowed in. Logan is allowed to watch the tape because of his work with the team, with commanders.com, with their digital team, etc. And so we have just a little bit more information, not to mention, obviously, Logan's expertise is something I think is rightfully desired in all Commander circles. So without further ado, a little bit of how Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett have been doing these last couple of weeks and how they're trending in opposite directions, but why that is not necessarily, even if you want Sam Howell to win the job, a cause for concern.
I want to put like a giant disclaimer on this for a second. I do not want the aggregators. I do not want the tweeters. I do not want anyone who hears the sound of our voices to freak out about the discussion we are about to have. It is June 5th. We have been through 6 OTA practices.
That's right.
However, in those 6 practices, the way they have trended, there's some interesting things that have started to develop.
Sure.
In very micro levels with the quarterbacks.
Sure.
Now, again, this is through 6 practices. It's all the data we have to go on. That does not mean that it is predictive in any way of the future. Does not mean it's time to sound any kind of alarm, panic, make predictions, really do anything other than discuss it. And, you know, we have the knowledge, hopefully, to be able to put this into some level of perspective, give some reasons why. But things have not been going great for Sam Howell. They've kind of trended the wrong way. And it feels like Jacoby Brissett's getting a little bit more comfortable.
Sure.
One, can you kind of color in those descriptions?
Yeah.
And 2, give us a little bit of context as to why that might be happening in late May and early June.
So I think there's kind of a little bit of like, this is probably how this was going to go. Like he came out the first 3 practices and looked like really, really good. Like
he being Sam Howell.
Sam Howell looked very sharp, on rhythm, on timing, balls out of his hand quickly, finding the open guy, confident throws down the field. You saw the release, you saw the arm action, right? And then you get into like week 2 of OTAs, and the defense, the first day of that period is team blitz, right? And we already talked about that on 3 podcasts ago. Team blitz is tough for the offense because you're not game planning for the blitzes. You might discuss them. Hey, they're going to run a cross dog, but you don't game plan your protections. You don't game plan the blitzes. Just like they're running their stuff, we're running our stuff. That tends to be a day that favors the defense. I actually thought Sam had a pretty solid performance, kind of getting the protections called correctly, getting the ball out of his hand relatively quickly, didn't put it in harm's way, looked a little off rhythm, but I'd say on the whole, kind of a plus day for him, So nothing crazy, not bad, not good, kind of perfectly neutral. Second day kind of trended down again. And I think there's another reason for that is that I think this young secondary is playing really, really, really well. And I think they're doing a great job of matching concepts at a really high level. And I will say, like, when you go to practice and you watch individual, the defensive backs are walking through the concepts they're going to see for that day. And that's not unusual. That's not unfair. That's just how practice goes. So as they get more comfortable matching those concepts, it gets harder and harder. And so then on the 3rd day, so the 6th day of practice, Sam, I would say, had not a bad day, but it definitely wasn't a good day, and a day that he would probably want to have back. And the way I characterize that is he's holding the ball for a long time. He's not making confident throws. He's missing throws that he probably should make. Like he overthrew Jahan Dotson in the back of the end zone. He had a ball to the flat that would have been a touchdown that he missed. And again, like they're not, like I couldn't make the throw, but I'm not an NFL quarterback, right? Like they're not easy throws, but they're like definitely within the realm of his skill set. So I think a couple misses, holding the football, putting the ball in harm's way when he didn't have to. You can see maybe a little bit of frustration, like not in his body language, but just trying to force the ball, like in these tight windows. Like that's tough, and I think we had this conversation last week is, I remember Kyle would start to game plan a little bit for the defense we were facing just to help the quarterback out a little. And Ron has said they're not game planning. The enemy said they're not game planning. But I do think when you do that, this is one of the byproducts of that, right? Is that the windows get really small, the secondary is really dialed in, the linebackers are really dialed in, and as a result, you get a quarterback who's maybe not making the most consistent decision. So I think that's kind of what you saw over the course of those 6 days. And I think, again, I probably should have expected it from Sam because he came out so hot that I was like, he's a second-year player. This is the first time he's got an extended playing time. Like it's going to come down. And so it did. And I'd say the last day was probably his roughest day. But again, like there's reasons for that. Like I remember talking to Kyle and Sean when I was in training camp with them here, and then obviously with Kyle in San Francisco. And one of the things he always used to mention was like the third or fourth day of install tends to be the worst day for the offense because you've kind of reached like this neural limit for guys. And so he kind of developed a system where he'd say, we're doing 3 days, and then we're going to do one kind of bonus day where we just kind of keep that same information and just review it. I don't think because they lost an OTA, they really have the luxury of doing that. So they got to kind of push through. So they just keep adding stuff as they go. And again, that's an assumption I'm making just based on the quality of practice. And that's the result. And that's something I experienced at every level of training camp or OTA that I was a part of. The third or fourth day, mental mistakes shoot up regardless of position. And it's kind of a bad day for the offense. And I think this kind of falls in line with that.
Yeah. So a couple of things in response to that. One, or in addition to that, to supplement that, however you want to look at it. One, we've talked about the volume of plays they have in. And, if that happens on offenses that are asking a lot less than this one is, then imagine what's going on in the brains of all these guys. There's so much information, not just the concepts, but where am I within that concept, as opposed to always knowing like I'm the X. Like you might be the X, you might be the Y, you might be the zebra, or you might be as an X lining up in line, you might be lining up, Y, you might have a mid split. Like the enemy moves guys around. There might be a bunch, there might be a stack, there might be so many different things that you're asked to do from those different positions that is a lot to remember and is going to cause mental mistakes to go up. And then from that position, you might have the same play, the same route concept, but if you're running it from a bunch versus cover 2 versus if you're split out, in kind of a more regular split versus cover 3, you're going to run the route differently. So there's just a ton of information for the receivers, the skill guys, for obviously the quarterbacks and what they're looking for and all those that you have to remember. And that makes a lot of sense. 2, I don't think part of the as expected is not just from he's performing really well. He's not going to sustain that because who can, unless you're one of the super elite guys in the league, which Hal is not, no shame in that. But it's also kind of by design of the drills, right? Like you can, if they wanted to design a practice where the only thing that mattered was Sam Howell winning the day, they could
easily,
they could do that. But that's not actually how he's going to get better, how the whole team is going to get better, and how they should progress as a football team. And so by the design of how practice is each day, some days are going to be easier, some days are going to be harder. And he's been kind of as expected each day, given who he is and where he is in his career. Remember, this is not just 6 practices for this offseason. This is 6 practices with real reps as QB1 in his entire career. So, of course, he's going to struggle in some of this stuff. And the question that we'll have over the next 3 days of minicamp, all of which are open to the media, over the probably 2 to 3 days that they'll have next week, depending on if they call off the final practice, and then ultimately through training camp, is do we see the same mistakes being made over and over again, or Does he learn from them, not repeat them? And are they able to continue their expansion of the offense and trajectory of growth that we've seen, even if it's not quite as rapid the last, let's say, 3 days as it was the first 3?
Yeah, and I also think, I think that's a great point. I think the other thing is like, right now, the way they've structured OTAs, and we've talked about this a little bit, it's all passing. So, like,
Yes.
the defense has no run reads, really. You know what I mean? I think they've run 2 runs the entire time over 6 practices. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. It was like the first day they ran 2, and then they haven't really run it since then. So that does allow the defense, allows the pass rushers, it allows the secondary to kind of fall into just covering passes, right? Safeties can be a little bit deeper. They can be a little bit slower on those play actions because they know it's not going to be a pass. So I think that's another thing. Like this is a very challenging ecosystem for an offense to be successful. And I think you're seeing some of the byproducts of that. That being said, though, I will say that, like Jacoby Brissett, for example, has
I was going to say, why is Brissett
sharper.
Seemingly getting better?
I think a couple of reasons, and I don't know for sure. You'd have to talk to him about this. But if I was going to make some assumptions or assertions, I would say, first off, he was working with the twos, right? And the twos are a bunch of younger players and a lot of undrafted free agents, a lot of guys who are kind of fringe roster guys. But those guys have gotten better. Those guys kind of understand contextually what the expectation is, how to beat certain coverages. And so they are, and I think they're pretty talented. Like, the undrafted free agent receiver out of Stanford, Brees is his first name, very, very dynamic. The kid from Minnesota State, very, very dynamic in terms of speed. Tinsley from Penn State, all those guys look like they could contend for a roster spot, which is kind of like, in the same way that you were surprised about the tight ends last year during training camp, OTAs, and just how talented they were. It's kind of the same thing. They've got 3 guys who could be on the roster. So those guys are growing up and maturing each and every practice. I think having 3 receivers that you feel good about helps the quarterback. Obviously, having skill position players be where they're supposed to be is helpful. Curtis Hodges is developing. Cole Turner is developing. Those guys are working with that group. And then you still get, the occasional like Dax Mills, who's had an excellent OTA period. Like those guys are playing better. And so that's one thing. They're creating separation. They understand concepts better. But I also think Jacoby, just by himself, understands the tempo and the cadence of this offense better. He understands how to deliver the football. He understands I don't need to wait on this. I can trust this guy, get the ball out there. And so he's played more football. And this is something we talked about when they signed him. We expected him to be better earlier. It took him a couple days, right? But now that he's in a little bit more of a it's a little bit more of a challenging situation for the offense, right? His experience, I think, is helping him out. His experience in this offense over the last, 6 days, he's understanding it more. The young receivers are developing. The young tight ends are developing. And again, I think that's a mismatch now at this point in the OTA period that favors him as the number 2 quarterback because they're playing better, but also he understands what's happening at a higher level, I think.
Yeah, he's also playing against the twos.
Correct.
Which is helpful. Like, he's not just playing with twos who are good and talented and maybe better than you anticipate, but, like, he's not having to face Emmanuel Forbes and, Derek Forrest and Percy
that's,
Butler
again,
and
to that
all
point
those guys.
About the free agent receivers is I think a lot of those guys are playing better than the other guys. You know what I'm saying? Like,
they're playing a lot better than the undrafted guys who are playing on defense.
Correct. Yeah. And so I think that's a big push, and obviously there's some other guys like the guy they signed from Kansas City, Tate, is that his name? The big receiver, number 19.
That's Marcus Kemp.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's played a lot of football, and you've got some guys out there. De'Ami Brown has had an excellent, OTA period, and he's had the kind of the big splash plays, but also some inconsistency. But the splash plays have been there, and so having kind of a stable of like 6, 7, 8 guys who can make plays, win one-on-ones, like that's a good ecosystem for him. But I also think it's his experience that's also elevating them too. Understanding the timings of things are much, much better. So I think that's also part of it.
Something that Ron said last week about Jacoby that I immediately noticed when I was at practice is his ball placement is just incredible.
Yeah.
Like he knows exactly how to throw away from leverage, for instance, something that Sam is probably still learning at the NFL level and will continue to grow in. And again, that's fine. He's young and this is what May and June are for, and to an extent what August is for. You hope that he's got a better handle on it by September. But when you talk about the ecosystem that we're talking about, these very tight windows because of the lack of play action efficacy and because the defense kind of knows what's coming. If you can dot a ball exactly where it needs to be, and that's kind of what makes you good, that's going to play right into that skill set. And so for Jacoby, the ability to know, like, okay, this is going to be a tight window. They're crashing down from here. I need to throw away from leverage, and having the experience to know where that spot is, and then the technical ability to repeatedly do it. Not surprising that he's kind of thriving under these circumstances, where Sam, who makes his game on a lot of other attributes and is still improving in that area and doesn't have the experience necessarily to know, is not necessarily doing as well. On that experience and where it's coming from, though, I would say the most concerning thing for me watching Howell last week in the one practice, and I think I mentioned this, so I apologize if I'm repeating this from the Thursday pod, but I felt like at times throwing over the middle of the field, he just flat out didn't see defenders. That to me is more concerning, because like you kind of got to understand the coverage versus, okay, it's really tight and I'm trying to throw it in there anyway. If you just don't see guys, like that's where you turn the football over. But I'm also getting to watch it from the sideline without ever seeing a replay. You have the actual film. Is that an accurate assessment? I mean, obviously it depends on the play, but is that something that kind of worth watching this week?
Yeah, I think so. It's always something worth watching, especially with a quarterback who's a little bit undersized. It's always important to check that out. I do think that, kind of to your point earlier, and I'm really glad you brought this up, like when guys are moving around, like in a West Coast system like they normally do, within the concept. So like, we're in a bunch, and on this play, Logan's the point, Terry's the widest guy, and Jahan's the inside guy. The next time we run the same play out of the same bunch, it could be different people, right? And so there's different coaching points on like who sets the depth on the mesh, or how deep is the sit, or who are you trying to pull on this pull route to open up the dig behind the route. And I do think that there has been a little bit of kind of like it's not bad, but a little bit of learning, right? Like, Sean and Kyle used to say it takes 3 years to learn an offense. And I totally agree with that. And it's not like that I know the concept almost immediately when they install it, but there's nuance and details there that says, hey, versus cover 2, I run the route like this, and I need to be on the same page with the quarterback. And versus cover 3, I need to run the route like this because I need to open this guy up, and I need to understand the difference. And that level of detail takes a little bit of time. And so I do think with some of that stuff over the middle of the field, the ones are much better at matching it, right? Because they just are. They've seen more of it, right? And 2, I think the skill guys are still learning kind of that minutia that makes an offense really dynamic. And to your point about Brissett, the 2 defense is not as good at matching it. So the details aren't as glaring from the receivers. Like when I run a pull dig concept, like the linebacker, whoever it is jumping the pull every single time because they don't have the experience to know that, hey, he's trying to hit the dig behind me. Like when you watch Cody Barton, he's really patient. He understands that that's not what's going to kill me. It's the dig behind me. So when Sam's trying to throw the dig over the middle of the field, it's a very small window because Cody is sitting there, and he's right. That's where the ball should go. You know what I mean? But he's probably got to get a little bit more experience, understand I can manipulate that guy with my eyes, get him to attach to that pull route a little bit more, and then throw the dig. So that's, I think, kind of where some of that minutia comes in and some of that middle of the field stuff happens. But it's not just Sam, just to kind of avoid that narrative. It's not Sam by himself. It's everybody learning the offense. And they're playing against a defense that's been largely together for a very long time and is very, very talented. And really, when you talk to defensive coaches, especially in the secondary, it's just, there's a finite number of route combinations you can run, and we just have to match them. It's just math. There's only a certain number of route combinations you can run out of these formations, and we just got to match them. And these guys have been together largely for 4 years. They understand what they're expecting. Even the young guys, like Percy, a year, Forrest, 2 or 3 years, like it's there.
Reeves is playing a lot.
Yes,
because
Reeves is
Cam's
playing
been sitting out.
That's right. And so I think that's something that when I look at it, I'm like, wow, like, there's definitely an advantage there because they have the details and the offense is still working those details out. And that's to be expected because it's a new offense.
Yeah, and that's such a good point too, just to kind of underscore it. Sam not seeing a guy or looking like he's not seeing a guy, that might just be because someone didn't run a route correctly, or a ball that looks high. Sam could have thrown it to the right point as the receiver came out of the break. he runs the route too shallow. Now
Right.
the ball looks high, but it's because he ran it at 12 instead of 15. And if Sam anticipates and throws the ball when he's coming out of the break, he doesn't know that he's going to come out at the wrong depth.
Yeah.
So those kinds of things happen. And I think it's really easy to be critical of quarterbacks, but that's why, like, someone with your knowledge, or when I used to work with Cooley, like his knowledge, if you know the offense, well, then you understand whose fault it actually is, and where the mistake was made, versus just assuming it's always the quarterback making a bad throw or not seeing a guy or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and it's not so much fault; it's just guys learning.
Yeah.
It's just learning
Yeah.
stuff.
Well,
And-
especially this time of year.
Yeah. And so I think that that was one of the things is like week one, it's all new concepts for the defense, and so. And again, so the offense, there's a little bit more space. The details aren't as important because the defense can't match them as well. Phase, what is this? Week 2 of OTAs. Obviously, that matching is a little bit tighter. The details become more important, and the offense takes a little bit of a step back. So,
yeah, Nick, I'm so sorry that we're gonna explode all the Odyssey Sports servers with all this nuance. It's so sexy that the people are just gonna be listening out the walls. Oh, look at them with their nuanced takes. Our bosses are so mad right now.
That's us. That's the brand. The brand is strong. We are nuanced. It's the Hoffman Show on Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/@theteam980. Leaving no stones unturned. When we get back, there is an NBA story that emerged today about two of the biggest stars in the game that is so impossibly stupid that I cannot believe we are going to spend time on it. But we are next.
Celebrate summer in D.C. with the Team 980 at the Giant Barbecue Battle, June 24th.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Real things, real people said into real microphones coming up at the bottom, or I guess before the top of the hour. When we are done, we give way to BetMGM tonight. We just saw Nick Ashew in the hallway while we were playing Take Command. So he's here. He's ready to go. I presume Ryan and Trista are with him. But yeah, that's coming up at the bottom of the hour. Anthony, you better get those headphones figured out, 'cause I'm gonna need you for this segment. You're my go-to LeBron guy.
Oh, we're ready.
Are you?
Oh, I'm pumped.
So there's earlier today, Shams Charania of The Athletic and Stadium reports that Kyrie Irving, he of endless good ideas. Dramatic pause. Need more time. Kyrie Irving, he of endless good ideas, has been lobbying the Dallas Mavericks, whom he was traded to at the trade deadline and does not have a contract with that extends into next season. He's going to be a free agent. Is lobbying the Dallas Mavericks to trade for LeBron James. What's wrong with that? Why wouldn't he? Well, because the Mavericks don't have anything to give up for LeBron James. There's no way they could. Sometimes people propose. This is the kind of thing that like a Mavs fan would do. I have a buddy, Aaron. I'm going to send him this clip later. My buddy, Aaron Schwartz. Love him to death. Happy belated birthday, Aaron. Had a birthday late last week. Love him so much. Sometimes he sends me ideas and I'm just like, buddy, this isn't Madden. This isn't NBA 2K. The other team gets a say. You don't get to force trade and just trade LeBron James to the Dallas Mavericks for 3 bench players. And, we'll let it happen. And then you go win a championship. That's not how this works. The Mavericks actually have to have something the Lakers want. And they don't want to give up LeBron James. So that would have to be something of a lot of value. Like Luka Doncic. The Mavs aren't trading Luka Doncic for LeBron James. That defeats the point. And also, you want Luka Doncic over LeBron James because Luka, theoretically, is going to be there for the next decade, and LeBron is 40 years old, or soon to be 40 years old. So, I'm like, why did Shams even bother reporting this? And then sure enough, Chris Haynes from TNT has a story about the same thing. And it's like, oh, this is a thing. Someone's pushing this, whether it's an agent, whether it's Kyrie, whether it's the Mavs. Someone is pushing this narrative out there, and these reporters are willing to do it for whatever reason. And Anthony, I cannot for the life of me figure out what this reason is, who is trying to leverage whom, or did these guys just decide to put on their Kyrie Irving crazy pants and open up Twitter and start tweeting? What are we doing? Why did this get reported?
Craig, I think this got reported because basketball, I don't think people, or I guess you might not realize how important LeBron is to the game of basketball. Like, even when you probably do. I apologize for it.
I'm insulted by that statement. I want to jump through this computer screen and then or that window that's right there, and I want to not anything permanent, but like this water bottle's too hard. I want to take a plastic water bottle that's not going to hurt too much and just bop you in the forehead.
Yeah. All right. So Craig understands, but people might not understand how important LeBron is to the game of basketball, and the fact that he's not in the finals, the fact that his team got swept by the Denver Nuggets, and all people wanted to talk about with the Lakers and their offseason and what happens to LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I think that's what we're just experiencing right now. Like, the finals, yeah, it's 1-1 right now. Is it the most entertaining finals that we've ever, seen? No. But guess what? LeBron James' future is still, uncertain. We don't know what he's going to do. So I just think it's these media members just throwing out, scenarios. And NBA free agency is almost upon us as well. So I think this is just, the ball starting to roll before it really picks up, to be honest.
So Chris Haynes wrote up an actual story for Bleacher Report.
Mm-hmm.
A new twist has emerged in the LeBron James-Kyrie Irving reunion plot, as league sources have told Bleacher Report. Irving wants the Dallas Mavericks to explore trading for LeBron this offseason to create a big three alongside himself and Luka Doncic. What a dumb, why would you put, Chris Haynes is a good reporter. What are you doing? Why are you putting that on paper? Digital paper. The Mavericks were preparing to make an offer to James last season when the Lakers were spiraling, sources say, despite James being ineligible for a trade last season due to the date of his extension. Perfect. But the Lakers made a string of trades near the deadline that changed the trajectory of their season. But any chance of forming a James Irving Doncic Big Three under the NBA's new restrictive collective bargaining agreement will be difficult. The new CBA resembles a hard cap, making it very difficult to have three max players on a roster. In order for Irving and James to partner with Doncic, the two would have to take a sizable pay cut. The easiest and unlikeliest path to adding James this offseason would be for him to orchestrate a buyout. At what point during writing this did Chris Haynes not have the light bulb go off that I shouldn't be writing this? It's not going to happen. This is so stupid. LeBron has $47 million remaining on his contract and a $50 million player option the following season. He's not turning down that money.
Quick question, devil's advocate. Do you really think money... I'm just asking a question. We're having a conversation.
Right.
Do you really think money is on LeBron's mind at this juncture of his career? You know, going into his 21st season, he only has so many left.
A few million?
Yeah.
No. The different, $20, $30 million? He's no dummy. Even to a billionaire, $20, $30 million is still, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And also, LeBron cares about player power, and the Union would be pissed.
Yeah, they would.
So LeBron will piss off the Union in his final year because he will turn down that $50 million player option, and he will go sign for league minimum wherever Bronny gets drafted. That's his, I'm pissing off the Union, I don't care, I'm going to do this because I want to play with my son deal. If that's how that goes down. He might also be like, Bronny, I'm going to make my $50 million. I might see you next year. I might retire, but if not, hopefully you get drafted into a team in my division so we can play each other 4 times. I don't know if LeBron wants to play with or against Bronny. That could be literally a $49 million decision. So we'll see. But the larger point is there's no mechanism for LeBron to do this. And the other part of this I think just drives me crazy. And I'm like, what are we doing? Why? Kyrie asking for LeBron in Dallas when he's not under contract in Dallas is I don't even know what the analogy is. It's I don't know. I was going to try to make a radio analogy, but I'm under contract. I'm not. I do shows. We don't have an off season here, right? He was in Dallas. They have his bird rights. It's easier for him to re-sign in Dallas, and they want to re-sign him in Dallas. And maybe this is a leverage thing for Kyrie, where he's they're trying to lowball him, and he's like, well, if you go get LeBron, I'm willing to. And it's what? There's a dot that I'm not connecting here where I don't want to go out of my way to bash Shams, who's awesome, and Chris Haynes, who's awesome for reporting this. I don't get it at all. I think it's weird that those two did and Woj didn't. Woj is willing to report a lot of stuff, and a lot of these insiders are willing to be mouthpieces for agents or teams or whatever, and couch things just enough so that it still covers as reporting. But it gets them the next story, which is how they sign their check. I just don't think Kyrie Irving's that smart. Which is interesting because for a long time I thought Kyrie Irving was very smart. I think Kyrie Irving is the rare person who is thoughtful but not smart. He's a thoughtful, unintelligent person. He does a lot of thinking, and that thinking takes him to completely nonsensical places. That's my Kyrie, where I've landed with him. It's not that I don't think he doesn't think things through. It's not that I don't think that he doesn't spend time or that he cares or he doesn't want to do X, Y, or Z thing that is some admirable trait. I just think he's not intelligent enough to get there. And that's kind of scary, and is why Kyrie has gotten himself in all kinds of trouble in all kinds of ways. Because he's a free spirit, free thinker who does too much thinking and not enough following of, already established rules like a salary cap or gravity.
I don't know. I don't know what was going through Kyrie's head.
That's a good Anthony. Honestly, honest to
don't.
God, that speaks well of you.
Yeah, I don't understand, but I would love to see LeBron and Kyrie team up somehow, some way.
Kyrie's gonna have to take a minimum contract to sign in LA, and guess what? I don't think LA wants him.
They don't. I've been checking
Which, by the
Twitter
way,
wires and
good. Don't
consistent.
bring him. Like, if you have aspirations of winning a championship, do not bring Kyrie Irving to your basketball team. I'm sorry. Like, he is so wildly skilled, so wildly talented, and cannot be trusted one iota. It's just, it is what it is. He's quit on how many teams in a row? The Nets were finally starting to put something together this year, and he blew it up. I'm good, man. I've been good on Kyrie for a long time. I'm just... You want to know what I want to happen? Who's a franchise that I hate? What's the team in the league that I dislike the most? For whatever reason. I don't really harbor a lot of ill will towards, like, franchises. Is there an owner that I don't like? Who do I not like? Is there a team you don't like? Who can we curse?
no, I don't really have a team that I don't like necessarily.
Is there a team that's like done a player dirty or a coach dirty? I need someone to put this curse on.
Oh, I mean, you can put it on the Rockets and Ime.
That's a good one. We'll just go with the Rockets. You know what I want the Rockets to do? Sign Kyrie Irving and Dylan Brooks.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. If you missed my thoughts on Will Dawkins being hired as the GM of the Wizards, highly recommend you go to our YouTube page, youtube.com/@Craig Hoffman. Got the full recap there. Of course, also be in our podcast feed. Or it was at 5:30, right, Anthony? 5:30 today?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir,
my bad.
5:30. We heard you the first time.
I was talking to you through the talkback button as opposed to over the air.
Oh, it sounds the same in my headphones.
I know.
The funny thing is it also sounds the same on the internet stream. We've had to, Anthony, here's a pull back the curtain. Well, first, let's finish the thought. 5:30, if you go to the Odyssey app, you hit the rewind feature. Anthony puts the nice little chapter titles on there, so you get to click that nice and easy. 5:30 if you want to hear the thoughts on Will Dawkins. But Anthony and I discovered very early in our streaming days that because of the way our current stream construction is, if Anthony talks to me in my headphones, what's supposed to be a private conversation, little inside baseball, inside radio trick, that goes to the stream. So Anthony and I have had to change our communication, which is a fun thing to watch on the stream, because typically when I hit the real things real people said in real microphone sounder, which is going to happen in 30 seconds, Anthony then tells me the out time. Yep. And it used to be he got in my ear and did it, but now he flashes the numbers. Anthony, you're going to have to do that again because I already forgot. He just did it, but I was talking. I need to be able to focus. Oh, Siri. Whoa, Siri. Now is not your time. Anthony will flash the numbers. So if you ever want to know what time the show's got to end so that we get out on time and get to BetMGM tonight on time, go to youtube.com/@theteam980 and you can watch Anthony give me the secret hand signals. If you're not already there, not going to be able to do that today because it's going to happen right now.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
You say 09?
Yes.
Wow. That one was a little confusing. I'm not going to lie.
I know, because the 4 or 5, I don't have 9 fingers to,
I mean, you do, but like.
Not on one hand.
Right. That did certainly make it complicated. Okay. I got about. I'm not going to do the math. We're just going to play the clips. All right. This weekend, the FA Cup final was a first. So the FA Cup, Anthony, you know what the FA Cup is?
No.
Okay. So take every team in English football. So like every soccer team, not just in the Premier League, but on all the levels of the English football pyramid. I'm pretty sure it's the top 5 on the English football pyramid, which are 4 it's 5 fully professional, and then below the 5th tier is like semi-professional. But the top 4, like you're talking about a different money structure, the whole deal. But all 5 tiers, and they all play in a giant tournament, and it takes all year, right? So it starts at the beginning of the season in August and goes all the way through. And sometimes you get really great stories, like Wrexham, the team that Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney own. We played a bunch of clips on that from that show during this segment previously. I can't wait for the next season to come out. They made it really far this year. They made it to like the 4th or 5th round, and were like playing and beating teams way above them on the pyramid, right? Well, by the end, typically you get 2 Premier League teams because obviously they're the best teams. They're in the top league. They have the most money, they have everything. But for the first time, it was the Manchester Derby. So you have Manchester United versus Manchester City. Obviously, incredibly intense rivalry. Manchester City, best team in the league this year. They've already won the Premier League. And that's nothing new. They're fantastic. And so now they face their bitter rivals, Crosstown, in the FA Cup final. And 12 seconds in, Man City scores on Man U, which sent this streamer into oblivion. Anthony, you bleeped all of this, right?
Yes, sir.
And you double-checked like 6 times.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because there's a lot of bleeps.
Start the clock here. Gundogan kicks the game off, and we're ready to go.
All right.
Look, Man City have gone long ball already there. Flicked into Haaland. Oh my God. The f are we doing? You can't believe it. You wouldn't believe it. What did I say before the game? Pick up the f***ing runners. 15 seconds in. 15 seconds. Pick up the runners, I said. Pick up the runners. Gundogan has got a bloody volley on the edge of the box, unmarked. Fucking useless pricks. What a waste of time. You've just f***ed it. You absolute f***heads. I can't speak about this. Absolute twat. Where's the midfield?
Can we say that last thing? I think we should dump that just in case. I think there was a word that slipped in, like a name call that we can't even say.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah, next time, Anthony, if you're not sure, let's just go ahead and be safe.
Yes, sir.
Also, a funny truth about radio. Often bleeps are funnier than the actual word. That's a game we should just do this summer. We should just bleep random words that we don't have to for fun. We just giggle like school children for an entire segment because we bleep random words in a Ron Rivera press conference that he could be saying like, we passed the ball, and you bleep passed, and, well, you got comedy. We'll see you tomorrow.
The Kevin Sheehan Show. Now